Welcome. Welcome everybody to this week's Genius Material webinar. You're probably already aware that exercise is good for you. You're probably also aware that exercise is good for your brain. Perhaps you've even read some of my blogs about it. Today, we're going to have a look at why exercise is good for your brain. We're going to have a look at the science that demonstrates what happens when we exercise. What specifically helps our brains to stay in tip-top condition and create new connections and better memories. There's been a lot of research into the difference between older people, some of whom remain mentally alert well into their 70s and 80s and even 90s, while others fall into a steep decline, almost as if they've given up. And we're going to look at the results of many studies to find out how this is relevant to us now, and how this information might help us to help ourselves when it comes to improving our study skills. We really need to start by looking right back at our early history. A couple of million years ago, as the rainforests shrank and the food supply collapsed with it, early man began to do a lot less climbing and a lot more walking, specifically across the African savannas, searching for food and shelter as they went. It's suggested that men would have walked 10 to 20 kilometres every day, and women 5 to 10. Early human beings, Homo erectus, evolved into Homo sapiens, or at least some scientists believe anyway that one evolved into the other. Anyway, Homo sapiens migrated across Africa 100,000 years ago, reaching places like Argentina, for example, 12,000 years ago. And to do that, they will have had to have crossed rivers, deserts, jungles, mountains, without maps or many tools. Eventually, of course, they would have had to have created ocean-going boats. So, as well as doing all of that, they would have had to have avoided new dangers, new predators, all the while searching for new food sources. They would have had to have survived injuries and strange illnesses. And they were also giving birth and raising families along the way. These were the circumstances under which the human brain developed, on the move. And of all the animals on the planet, the human brain is the most complex and highly developed of them all. And it developed as they trogged about many, many, many miles every day. Movement was natural and normal. Something for us to think about here, because physiologically we are pretty much the same as they were. If it was normal and natural to do so much exercise in those days, then what does that tell us about now? Well, the news is, the most accurate predictor of whether somebody will remain mentally alert well into later life, or whether they will decline as the years go by, is how active they are. We now have evidence to demonstrate that older people with an active lifestyle easily outperform the couch potato in tests measuring long-term memory, reasoning, attention span, and solving new problems, using, for example, powers of reasoning and abstraction, improvising, manipulating learned information from previous experiences. Their improved cardiovascular fitness also reduces the risk of heart attack and stroke. However, short-term memory and reaction times don't seem to be changed by activity when they test those. One question the scientists wanted to address was, if somebody had been a couch potato, is it possible for their brain function to improve if they were now to get more exercise? Or if you've been a couch potato all your life, is it too late to make improvements? Well, there is good news on that score. Studies of school children have shown us the answer to that one. Those who spent 30 minutes jogging 2 or 3 times a week for 3 months had improved cognitive performance, compared to the test group who took no exercise. What's more, when the children stopped exercising, their cognitive performance levels went back to their original place, demonstrating a direct link between exercise and brain power. And I have to tell you that all the research I'm going to mention has been repeated time and time again, consistently producing the same outcomes. So if you're not a huge fan of moving about, you might be thinking that all of this is bad news and it's not good. And you might be wondering just how little exercise you get away with. And it turns out that any movement is better for your brain than no movement at all. So even couch potatoes who do a lot of fidgeting have better cognitive function than couch potatoes who are perfectly comfortable sitting motionless. More good news is that too much exercise, the sort that leaves you exhausted, is bad for your brain. So you can cross that one off the list right away. The answer is just 30 minutes of aerobic activity just 2 or 3 times a week. That's all you have to do. For bonus points, you would add a session or 2 of strengthening exercises. You know the sort, weight-bearing exercises, that strengthen your bones. People who walk several times a week also have it covered. Amazingly, aerobic exercise, and that's any sort of exercise that has you breathing faster than normal, cuts down your chances of age-related dementia by 50%. It cuts your risk of Alzheimer's by a whopping 60%. And if you were to walk 20 minutes every day, your risk of stroke drops by 57%. That's enormous. Maybe I'm preaching to the converted. Maybe you already take exercise and enjoy it. Maybe it's already a regular feature in your diary. But if not, you must have heard lots of people say that they learn to look forward to it when they've been doing it for a while. It's often the case that just making a start is the most difficult part. If that sounds like you, remember the well-known Nike advert and just do it. But find something you enjoy doing. Not something that feels like total punishment, because that won't last long, will it? It's about moving more, not thrashing ourselves on the treadmill. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. Physiologically, we may be the same as our ancestors, but look how we react these days with our environment. Just 1 generation ago, we would walk upstairs because there wasn't a lift in every shop or office. We would walk from one shop to the next to get all of our shopping. We would walk home laden with heavy shopping. Washing was done by hand. Clothes washing was squeezed through a mangle and hung up to dry outside, taken down and ironed. In the kitchen, stirring, blending, chopping, kneading was all done by hand. It's all hard work. The lawn was mown with a simple machine powered by a human. Even in our day, our childhood, we used to walk or cycle to school or the office. We would make our own entertainment as kids, using our imaginations and running around outside until it got dark and we were called in. Do you remember the days we used to have to get up and walk across the room to change the channel? Within the space of a few generations, and probably mostly within ours, we've become quite sedentary and dependent on machinery to get things done and to get us from A to B. And it's taking its toll on our health. Moving more, on the other hand, has many other benefits, and I would just like to mention some of those now. Exercise regulates certain neurotransmitters. They are serotonin, dopamine, and noradrenaline. They are the very hormones that help us to feel good about ourselves and good about life in general. Some psychiatrists are prescribing exercise for patients with depression or anxiety because it's better than anything else we know to treat those conditions. In some cases, exercise replaces medication altogether. It's so much more effective. Not to mention, of course, there are no negative side effects, only good ones. It seems that those who benefit most from adding exercise to their therapy are older people or those with the most severe cases of anxiety or depression. And the longer they take exercise, the more benefits they get. but they don't have to wait long because the benefit is felt almost straight away. It's been found that when schools sacrifice time from academic subjects to provide the opportunity for youngsters to take part in physical exercise, there is no decline in their academic tests for language, reading, or any of the other basic tests. In addition, it's found that when trained staff lead the PE sessions, their academic tests actually improve. So think about this as I'm talking about it. How can this be useful to you if you want to improve your grades, your chances of passing your exams? Wouldn't it be worth considering getting some exercise? I think we know the answer to that already. It's found that children who are physically fit are able to concentrate better and for longer and use a wider variety of intellectual resources. They're less disruptive in the classroom and report less depression and anxiety. They also have higher self-esteem. They feel good about themselves. How's your self-esteem? No, I'm not being funny. I'm being serious. Busy professionals who've been struggling to be successful in compulsory exams are not going to feel good about themselves, are they? With any luck, now that you've been using Genius material for a little while, your confidence and self-esteem are getting back up to where they should be. But it's worth noting that exercise helps on that score too. Here's something else that's useful to us. The children having extra PE lessons were quicker with their visual skills. They identified visual stimuli faster. How might that be useful to us? Genius material is all about finding the best way for you to revise, to find the quickest, the most efficient, the most interesting way to whip through your course material, and to retain it so you can pass your exams easily. We know that everybody processes, stores and retrieves information differently, and we also know that we human beings have a lot in common with each other. If you've been paying attention, you'll know that no matter what our starting point is, the more we develop our visual skills, the faster our revision can be. So if you're already using your visual skills and you're exercising, and we know that exercise develops and enhances your visual skills, you'll fly through your work. A British study, repeated in other countries, took 10,000 civil servants aged 35 to 55. They rated their exercise habits as high, medium or low, and then measured their cognitive function. You can hear it coming, can't you? Those who did the most exercise had the highest cognitive function, especially when it came to problem solving, which uses more of the brain. Okay, let's look at what's going on. Why is exercise good for the brain? It's all to do, believe it or not, with digestion. That's the process of turning the food you ingest into sugar, glucose, which provides energy for your body. The glucose is absorbed into the blood from the intestines and through the blood reaches every part of the body. It goes into each cell of your body, and each cell utilizes it for energy, creating waste as a byproduct in the process. Not everybody realizes that this waste is actually toxic to the body and quite deadly. It can even cause DNA mutations, and we all know that can be bad news and a tad inconvenient, to say the least. So what happens is that the oxygen we breathe behaves like a sponge and mops up this toxic waste, transforming it into carbon dioxide, which is also poisonous but transferable. So then it's carried via the blood to the lungs and breathed out, of course, into the atmosphere. So that's important to remember. The oxygen we breathe behaves like a sponge and mops up and transfers the toxic waste. Your brain weighs about 2% of your total body weight, but uses up about 20% of the total energy used by the body. This is about 10 times more than you might expect. It's so fuel hungry that it can only fire up about 2% of its neurons any one time. In fact, if it tried to work harder than that, the glucose supply would be exhausted and you'd faint. That's like nature's way of telling you to slow down. So I hope it's beginning to make a bit of sense. Your brain is using a hell of a lot of energy and is therefore making a lot of toxic waste in the process. And remember, it's oxygen that transforms that waste and gets it out of the body. Exercise makes you breathe faster and deeper and get oxygen into your system. And just to demonstrate how essential oxygen is to the good functioning of your brain, you've only got to look at what happens when you starve it. You can go without food for 30 days. You can go for about a week without water. But 5 minutes without oxygen gives you permanent and serious brain damage. Oxygen is absolutely essential to the brain. So what is happening when you exercise? Exercise stimulates blood vessels to release nitric oxide, which dilates your blood vessels and regulates the flow of blood. And as a consequence, new blood vessels are created and work their way deeper into tissues, so there is more access to those tissues to the oxygen and glucose they need. And the resultant toxic waste is removed quicker. Aerobic exercise causes the heart to pump faster, which increases the blood flow. But not only that, exercise stimulates one of the NGFs, the nerve growth factors in the brain. It's called BDNH. In other words, the BDNH, the brain-derived neurotrophic hormone, that's created when you exercise. And more than that, the more exercise you do, the more BDNH is produced. So what, I hear you ask? BDNH behaves a little like fertilizer does on your flower bed. That's the so what. It encourages existing brain cells to stay young and healthy, and also stimulates neurogenesis, in other words, the creation of new cells and healthy tissue. Brain imaging shows increased levels of blood in the brain, particularly in the dentate gyrus in the hippocampus, which is essential for the formation of memories. Let's have a look at how you make energy and where it's made. Our muscles are the means by which we move about, obviously. They're sophisticated machines that use oxygen to burn fat or glucose in tiny little engines called mitochondria, which appear in their millions. They're like little factories that produce the energy to contract those muscles. As you get fitter, your body creates many more of those mitochondria to cope with the extra energy demand. Mitochondria can burn either fat or glucose depending on the sort of work you're doing. Fat is the fuel that you use during longer, slower activity. But during hard exercise, when you need speed and power, it's the glucose that's burnt. When you're resting, or when you're doing light exercise, you burn 95% fat and 5% glucose. These energy sources travel through your circulation to reach your muscles where they're used. But that's quite hard because your blood is largely water, and you know fat doesn't dissolve in water. Fat is transported in triglycerides, which are special proteins. But the finest blood vessels, your capillaries, can only handle a few of those at a time. So these mitochondria get only a trickle of fuel. But when you get into a regular routine of exercise, your body builds new networks of capillaries to bring more fat to your muscles. By the way, when you exercise hard, you're still burning fat, but the extra energy that you need comes from burning glucose, a sort of sugar, which is stored in your muscles ahead of time. Steady, consistent aerobic exercise over the months and years produces dramatic improvements in your circulatory system. And this is one of many ways that exercise saves your life. The fact is, the more you work your body, the more new mitochondria are created, the more new capillaries are created to feed them. That's why your muscles get firmer. They're all bulging with the extra mitochondria, capillaries, and glucose. Now, free radicals are patterns or groups of atoms, usually oxygen, with an odd number of electrons. In other words, not all of them are paired up. When they're paired up, they're stable. When one of the pair is missing, it attracts to it a molecule from somewhere else, so it regains its status quo. Unfortunately, like a criminal, it'll take what it needs from wherever it can get it, including our DNA and cell membranes. Under normal circumstances, while you're resting, your body's own antioxidant defense system can easily handle the free radicals that are produced. When exercising and your oxygen increases, free radical production sometimes exceeds the rate of removal, and then you can get cell membrane damage. It's lipid peroxidation. You know that's happened because you end up exhausted and your muscles ache for days. People who continually overdo it tend to have a weakened immune system and become more susceptible to infections and illness. When you damage your muscles this way, and you get inflammation at its greatest about 24 hours later, it's a sign that you've got oxidative stress and you've exceeded your body's ability to mop up the extra free radicals from the exercise. This is beginning to sound like bad news. However, free radicals are produced naturally by the body and have beneficial side effects. Your immune system uses free radicals to mark, to highlight foreign invaders or damaged tissue so the body can destroy and remove those cells. It's a kind of quality control. This is the reason why the jury is out on whether supplementing with antioxidants is a good idea. Some studies suggest that overdoing it on supplementation prevents the body from doing the job effectively, of removing the cells that shouldn't be there. Antioxidants work to protect the lipids from peroxidation by free radicals. Antioxidants work by giving up their own electrons to the free radicals, thus making them stable again. So now that it's stable, it doesn't need to attack the cell wall and the chain reaction of oxidization is broken. Meanwhile, the antioxidant is now missing an electron and becomes a free radical itself. But these free radicals aren't harmful and the body copes with them by creating its own antioxidants from the food we eat. Good antioxidant food includes, and you won't be surprised at this, fruits, vegetables, seeds, nuts, vegetable oil. Vitamin E is probably the most potent antioxidant, and there's loads of it within the cell wall. So this is the body's first line of defense against the process of peroxidation. If the cell wall is broken, however, within the contents of the water-soluble cell are more oxidants, including vitamin C. It's clever, isn't it? It's reckoned that vitamins A, C and E and the mineral selenium make the best antioxidants. And the best way of getting those into your body to create the right balance is through your food rather than supplementation, the effects of which we still don't fully understand. Exercising heavily increases the uptake of oxygen by 10 to 20 times more than you're at rest. And it turns out that regular exercise strengthens your own antioxidants defense system. So, to conclude, exercise is an all-round improver. It improves your chances of avoiding heart disease and stroke, the toxic effects of stress, diabetes, many cancers, cholesterol problems, etc., etc., etc. It improves your immune system, it regulates your appetite, it makes your muscles and bones stronger and improves your strength and balance. Without exercise, as we get older, our strength and balance deteriorate, and they're the main reasons why older people suffer falls and accidents. There's no doubt about it, exercise is good for you. It's good for the whole of your body. It's good for your memory. This, by the way, watching sports, isn't quite what I mean by exercise. Better to actually do it. Although, I must admit that due to the mirror neurons we have in our brains, watching somebody else getting fit can rub off positively on us. And if we watch in a particular way, it'll actually make us fitter too. But let's not go there for the moment. Never mind that for now. I know that the very notion of exercise can send some people shuddering to the comfort of their favourite chair, glass of wine in one hand, TV remote in the other. And quite frankly, with good reason, because many people start off with good intentions, going berserk at the gym, completely overdoing it, feeling sick, hardly able to move, for the pain for the next 2 or 3 days. If the memory of that is what's putting you off, I really wouldn't blame you. So forget all about that. Instead, make a list of activities that you actually already enjoy, and then work out which of them you could do on a regular basis in order to raise your heart rate and breathing rate to 20 to 30 minutes 2 or 3 times a week. Start gently. Make sure that what you do you enjoy. That way you'll go out a second time, third time, and so on. It's meant to be pleasant, not miserable. If that's how you feel, then you're simply not doing it right. And over time you'll find that doing a little more can walk further at the same time, for example. You might have heard the expression, what gets measured gets done. So get one of those pedometers, get a step counter, and just notice your progress. If you're a cyclist, get a cheap computer to measure how fast you're going, how long you've been cycling. Make it interesting. And by the way, I'm going to let you into a little secret. It's something you may have had a sneaky suspicion about already. Further research has made it quite clear that the thing about exercise that makes it so good for your cognitive function, so we're talking about your brain here, not the rest of your body, the thing about exercise that's so good for your brain is the increased oxygen made available to your body and brain. Similar cognitive improvement is to be had without exercise when given supplementary oxygen. It's all about the oxygen. Unfortunately, without a better understanding of how much oxygen, the density of oxygen in the mix, or where the heck you'd get it, I think I'll stick to exercise. That way you know you're doing the right thing. So a good question to ask ourselves is, if I were to incorporate more moving about into my daily routine, what would be the easiest, the most fun thing to start doing? And then, taking the advice of the God of trainers, just do it. That's it. I hope you found it interesting and useful, certainly a bit different this week. It may not have been what you wanted to hear, but it's probably one of the most important things we should know about for developing a better memory. Do we have any questions? No? Everybody happy with that? Okay. Well, that's it again for this week. Hope you've enjoyed it. Have a great week. See you next Friday. Bye-bye.